On my son Adrian's 28th birthday came the beginning of my downfall. The next morning I awoke in shock to find my young secretary beside me with no memory of the night before. Shame tore me apart, made even more unbearable by the fact that my beloved wife had passed away less than a year earlier. Then came the claims of pregnancy, followed by relentless demands for money. Yet suspicion gnawed at me, hinting at a far darker truth. And when I stepped into that conference room with a folder in hand, what I revealed not only cleared my name, but also exposed a ruthless betrayal. Comment below and tell me where in the world you're watching this story unfold. Because what I revealed in that conference room changed everything. The pounding in my head felt like a construction crew had taken up residence behind my eyes. I groaned, rolling over in my king-size bed, immediately regretting the movement, as waves of nausea crashed through me. What the hell had happened the night before? As my vision slowly focused, I became aware of something that made my blood run cold. There beside me, in my own bed, was Ember Lawson, my 26-year-old secretary, wearing nothing but my white dress shirt. Her auburn hair was tousled across my pillow, and she was just beginning to stir. "Oh my God," I whispered, my voice hoarse and barely audible. Ember's green eyes fluttered open, and for a moment, we just stared at each other in absolute horror. The silence stretched between us like a chasm filled with implications I couldn't even begin to process. "Mr. Whitaker, she stammered, pulling the sheet up to cover herself, her cheeks flushing crimson. I can't remember how." Neither could I. The last clear memory I had was of the birthday celebration here at the house. There had been champagne laughter colleagues from Whitaker Enterprises mingling on the back patio. After that, everything dissolved into fragments. Blurry faces, the taste of whiskey, someone helping me to my room because I felt dizzy. "This can't be happening," I muttered, running my hands through my graying hair. At 58, I'd built a reputation in Phoenix's construction industry that was beyond reproach. 30 years of marriage to my beloved Rosalind, a year of faithful grieving since her passing, and now this. Ember scrambled out of bed, frantically searching for her clothes, scattered across my hardwood floor. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Whitaker. I don't know what came over me. The wine, the party atmosphere. I should never have—" "No, Ember, this is my fault," I said, though my mind was reeling. "I'm the one in the position of authority here. I should have been more responsible." She was already pulling on her black cocktail dress, her movements jerky with embarrassment. "I need to go. This never should have happened. I'm so ashamed." As she hurried toward the door, I caught sight of the silver-framed wedding photo on my nightstand. Rosalind and me on our wedding day 32 years ago, both of us glowing with joy and promise. Her gentle smile seemed to pierce right through me, and I felt something break inside my chest. "Rosalind," I whispered to the empty room as the front door slammed shut downstairs. I sat on the edge of my bed, head in my hands, trying to piece together how I could have betrayed everything I held sacred. Rosalind had been gone for exactly 1 year, and I'd sworn to myself that no one could ever take her place. I'd been faithful to her memory, faithful to the promise I made at her graveside. The morning sun streaming through my bedroom windows felt harsh and accusatory. My reflection in the dresser mirror showed a man I barely recognized, disheveled, haunted, racked with shame. How could I have let this happen? How could I have been so weak? My phone buzzed with a text from Adrian. "Hope you're feeling okay this morning, Dad. You seemed pretty out of it last night." Out of it. That was one way to put it. But something about the whole situation felt off, like pieces of a puzzle that didn't quite fit together. The gaps in my memory, the way I'd felt so suddenly dizzy. The fact that I couldn't recall a single moment leading up to finding Ember in my bed. Little did I know this was just the beginning. Staring at that wedding photograph, 32 years of memories came flooding back. Rosalind's radiant smile transported me instantly to St. Joseph's Hospital, where I'd first met the woman who would become my everything. I was 26, recovering from a construction accident with a shattered leg. She was the night shift nurse who refused to let me wallow in self-pity, challenging me with tough love and genuine compassion I'd never experienced. You can either lie there feeling sorry for yourself or decide what kind of man you want to be. She'd set her hands gentle but firm during physical therapy. Those brown eyes held such wisdom, such strength. Our courtship was stolen moments between her shifts and my recovery. When I proposed 2 years later in the hospital cafeteria, where we'd shared countless cups of terrible coffee, she laughed until she cried before saying yes. 3 years into marriage, our joy multiplied when Adrian was born. Our biological son became the center of our universe, a perfect blend of Rosalind's gentle nature and my stubborn determination. Watching him grow from a curious toddler into a bright young man filled our hearts with indescribable pride. For 28 years, we built something extraordinary. Whitaker Enterprises grew from a small residential contractor to Phoenix's premier construction company. But our real masterpiece was our family. Adrian thrived under our love, graduating from Arizona State, with honors joining the business, making us proud every single day. Then came the diagnosis that shattered our world. Stage 4 lung cancer, Dr. Martinez said gently but uncompromisingly. We're looking at months, not years. That night, as Rosalind slept fitfully beside me, I made a decision I've never shared with another soul. If I couldn't spend my life with the woman I loved, then I wouldn't spend it with anyone. The next morning, I scheduled an appointment with Dr. Michael Harrison, a urologist I knew through business connections. Are you absolutely certain about this vasectomy, Graham? Dr. Harrison asked during consultation. You're only 56. I've never been more certain, I replied. If Rosalind and I can't grow old together, then this chapter ends with her. The procedure was performed at a private Scottsdale clinic. No insurance claims, no paperwork trail, just cash and discretion. Adrian never knew. Nobody knew. It was my private act of devotion, my final promise to the woman who'd saved my life in every way that mattered. Those last 6 months were both agony and grace. I took leave to care for Rosalind full-time, holding her hand through chemotherapy, reading her favorite novels when she was too weak, dancing slowly in our kitchen when she felt strong enough. Her final words whispered in pre-dawn darkness were, "Promise me you'll find happiness again, my love. Promise me you won't close your heart." I'd promised, knowing it was a lie. My heart had been buried with her at Desert View Cemetery exactly 1 year ago, which made this morning's situation with Ember not just morally devastating, but medically puzzling. Something about the whole scenario felt off, but I couldn't quite put my finger on what. The transformation of my beloved son began 10 months after we laid Rosalind to rest. Grief affects people differently, and while I threw myself into work to cope with the loss, Adrian found solace in places I never could have imagined. It started innocently enough. Poker nights with college buddies, weekend trips to the casinos in Laughlin. "Just blowing off steam, Dad," he'd say when I expressed concern about his frequent absences from the office. Mom always said life's too short not to have a little fun. But what I mistook for healthy grieving was actually the beginning of a dangerous spiral. The occasional poker game became nightly online sessions. Weekend casino trips stretched into week-long binges in Las Vegas. The son who'd once been meticulous about every construction detail at Whitaker Enterprises started missing meetings, arriving late, making costly errors on job sites. The real devastation came when cryptocurrency fever hit. Adrian became obsessed with get-rich-quick schemes, convinced he could multiply his inheritance overnight. "Bitcoin millionaires are made every day, Dad," he'd argue when I tried to counsel caution. "Mom left me that money to secure my future." What he didn't tell me was that he'd already blown through most of Rosalind's $200,000 life insurance payout on a fraudulent cryptocurrency platform. By the time he realized he'd been scammed, it was too late. The website had vanished, taking his mother's final gift with it. Desperate to recoup his losses, Adrian borrowed heavily from underground lenders, the kind of people who don't send polite reminder notices when payments are late. Within months, he owed an additional $150,000 to men who settled debts with broken bones rather than paperwork. 3 months ago, facing threats that were becoming increasingly violent, my son made a decision that would destroy everything we'd built together. He began studying our company's newest employee, Ember Lawson, a 26-year-old secretary who'd joined us 6 months earlier. Ember was perfect for his purposes, young, financially struggling, and isolated. Her mother was battling expensive medical treatments for diabetes, and her younger brother needed tuition money for his final year at Northern Arizona University. She was drowning in bills, working double shifts just to stay afloat. "I have a proposition for you," Adrian had said, cornering her in the break room one afternoon. $30,000 cash, no questions asked. "All you have to do is help me with a small family matter." Ember's initial reaction was suspicion, but desperation has a way of eroding moral boundaries. When Adrian explained that his father was too stubborn and old-fashioned to help family members in need, she began to listen. The plan he outlined was elaborate and calculated. During his upcoming birthday party, she would slip a mild sedative into my drink, Nothing dangerous, just enough to make me drowsy and confused. Once I was incapacitated, she would help me to my bedroom and create a compromising scene that would suggest intimacy had occurred. My father's a good man, but he's got this rigid moral code, Adrian explained, his voice smooth and convincing. If he thinks he's done something inappropriate, he'll do whatever it takes to make it right. A few months later, you tell him you're pregnant, and he'll pay whatever you ask to keep it quiet. The beauty of the scheme from Adrian's perspective was that it played perfectly into my character. He knew I'd be devastated by the thought of betraying Rosalind's memory, knew I'd feel obligated to take responsibility for my actions, knew I'd pay any amount to protect both Ember and my reputation. What he didn't know, what nobody knew, was that his plan had a fatal flaw built right into it. Ember wrestled with the decision for weeks, but ultimately her family's needs won out over her conscience. The $30,000 would cover her mother's medical bills and her brother's tuition, with enough left over to finally breathe easy for the first time in years. "Okay," she whispered on a Friday afternoon, her voice barely audible. "I'll do it." 2 months passed before the real scheme began. 2 months after that disastrous birthday party, Ember knocked on my office door. The moment she walked in, I could see something was different. Her usual confidence had been replaced by nervous fidgeting, and she clutched a small white envelope in trembling hands. "Mr. Whitaker, I need to speak with you about something important," she said, closing the door behind her. My stomach dropped. Ever since that morning, we'd maintained awkward professional distance, both pretending nothing had happened. "What is it, Ember?" She placed the envelope on my desk with shaking fingers. "I'm pregnant. The baby. It's yours from that night." The words hit like a sledgehammer. I stared at the pregnancy test results. 2 pink lines that might as well have been a death sentence for everything I'd built. "Are you certain?" I managed to ask. "I've taken 3 tests. They're all positive." Tears welled in her eyes. "I know this is terrible timing, especially with Mrs. Whitaker's passing, still so recent." What she didn't know was that her announcement was biologically impossible. The vasectomy 18 months earlier had been completely successful. There was 0 chance I could father a child with anyone, but looking at her tear-streaked face and the damning results, guilt overwhelmed my logical mind. Something had clearly happened between us that night. "What do you need from me? I don't want to ruin your reputation, but I need help with medical expenses. Prenatal care doctor visits. It's expensive." Without hesitation, I wrote her a check for $20,000. "This should cover your immediate needs." The relief on her face seemed genuine. "Thank you, Mr. Whitaker. You're a good man." A week later, she returned with completely different energy. The tears were gone, replaced by steely determination. "20,000 won't be nearly enough." She began settling into the chair with newfound confidence. "I'll need at least 50,000 more for medical bills, time off work, and emotional distress compensation." The sudden shift set off alarm bells in my business-trained mind. Emotional distress, compensation. This whole situation has been traumatic. The shame, the worry about my future, the impact on my career prospects. I leaned back, studying her carefully. "Maybe you should get a second opinion on the pregnancy, just to be sure." Her composure cracked. "Are you questioning my honesty?" "I'm questioning the timing and amounts. This feels less like a request and more like a demand." She left empty-handed and visibly frustrated. The 3rd attempt came days later with legal threats. "My lawyer says I have grounds for sexual harassment." She announced her vulnerability completely gone. A powerful executive taking advantage of a young employee. The media would love that story. "Unless we reach a private settlement, 100,000 should cover my silence." Everything clicked into place. 30 years of business had taught me to recognize extortion. The escalating demands, shifting tactics, legal threats. It was textbook manipulation. "I think you should be careful about your next move, Ember. False accusations have serious legal consequences." Her mask slipped completely, revealing calculating coldness I'd never seen before. "We'll see about that, Mr. Whitaker." As she stormed out, I realized someone had been coaching her through this entire performance. The question was who? That's when the real attack began. The phone call that sealed my fate came on a Tuesday afternoon. Ember had forgotten to fully close my office door when she stepped into the hallway for what she thought was a private conversation. "He's not budging, Adrian," she whispered urgently. "Your father called my bluff. He threatened me with legal action." There was a pause as she listened. Then her voice turned defensive. "I did exactly what you told me. The tears, the vulnerability, the demands, the threats. He saw right through it." My blood turned to ice. My own son had orchestrated this entire nightmare. Fine, Ember continued. If you want to go nuclear, that's your choice. But I want the rest of my money first. Within hours, the character assassination began. It started at the Phoenix Business Association's weekly mixer. Adrian worked the room with devastating efficiency, his voice heavy with manufactured disappointment. I'm so ashamed of my father. He told Margaret Stevenson Chamber of Commerce president, getting his secretary pregnant and refusing to take responsibility. It's not the man who raised me. The story spread like wildfire through Phoenix's tight-knit business community. By Thursday, concerned colleagues were calling for my side of the story. By Friday, 3 major construction contracts had been postponed pending review. But Adrian wasn't finished. He understood social media's power in ways my generation never grasped. Carefully orchestrated posts began appearing across multiple platforms. Disgusted by wealthy executives who prey on young employees, then abandon them. Breeder power abuse. Justice for Ember. When a construction mogul gets his secretary pregnant and refuses child support, it's criminal. Phoenix scandal. The posts included enough identifying details without mentioning Whitaker Enterprises by name. Clever, calculated, utterly ruthless. Ember played her part perfectly, appearing at local establishments where business associates would see her looking appropriately distressed. She gave carefully worded interviews painting herself as an innocent victim of a powerful predator. The Arizona Republic picked up the story within 2 weeks. Local construction executive faces harassment allegations, ran above the fold, complete with our company headquarters photograph and quotes from anonymous sources. My employees began treating me like a pariah. Conversations stopped when I entered rooms. Respectful good morning greetings became awkward nods and averted eyes. I felt their judgment, their disgust, their lost respect. The worst part was watching my son perform as the disappointed offspring. At our monthly all-hands meeting, he stood during the open forum. I want to apologize for the negative attention our company has received, he said, voice trembling with apparent emotion. Leadership's actions don't reflect our values at Whitaker Enterprises. The applause felt like nails being driven into my coffin. Major clients found excuses to terminate contracts. The Henderson Mall renovation, a $2 million project we'd planned for months, was awarded to our biggest competitor. The city council quietly removed us from municipal building consideration. Within 3 weeks, my reputation, built over 30 years of honest dealing, charitable giving, and community involvement, lay in ruins. The man once invited to every charity gala was now persona non grata in his own city. The truth hit like a physical blow. My own son was the architect of my destruction. The child I'd raised, loved, and trusted with my business legacy had weaponized everything he knew about me. This wasn't just betrayal, it was patricide by 1,000 cuts. Standing in my empty office on a Friday evening, watching the Phoenix skyline through windows that might soon belong to someone else, I finally understood Adrian's desperation and ruthlessness. But I refused to surrender without a fight. The decision to strike back came to me during the darkest hour of that Friday night. Sitting alone in my study, surrounded by 3 decades of business awards and family photographs, I realized that wallowing in self-pity wouldn't restore my reputation or expose the truth. If my own son wanted to wage war using lies and manipulation, then I would respond with the most powerful weapon at my disposal, irrefutable evidence. My first stop Saturday morning was Desert Medical Center's records department. As a patient, I had every right to request copies of my complete medical history, including the procedure that would prove Ember's pregnancy claim impossible. I need documentation of my vasectomy from 18 months ago. I told the clerk, a middle-aged woman who thankfully didn't seem to recognize me from the recent news coverage. The file she retrieved contained everything I needed: preoperative consultation notes, surgical reports, and most importantly, the postoperative sperm analysis confirming the procedure's success. Dr. Michael Harrison's signature was on every page, along with clinical language that left no room for interpretation. But I needed more than historical records. I needed current, undeniable proof. Monday morning found me back at Dr. Harrison's office for fresh testing. The urologist, a golf buddy from the country club, had heard the rumors, but maintained professional discretion. Graham, I have to ask, is this related to the allegations I've been hearing around town? It's related to proving my innocence, I replied. How quickly can you get me results? 24 hours for a complete sperm analysis. But given what I know about your procedure, I can tell you what the results will show. While waiting for the lab results, I made my second strategic move, hiring the best defamation attorney in Phoenix. Catherine Brooks's law office occupied the top floor of downtown's most prestigious building, and her reputation for destroying false accusers was legendary. "Mr. Whitaker, I've been following your situation in the media," she said during our consultation. "If you can prove these allegations are fabricated, we can not only clear your name but pursue significant damages." I laid out everything I suspected about the conspiracy, and she immediately recommended bringing in professional help to document the financial trail. Marcus Webb, the private investigator Catherine recommended, was a former FBI agent who specialized in corporate fraud cases. Within 48 hours, he'd uncovered a treasure trove of damning evidence. "Your son's in deep trouble," he reported during our meeting at his downtown office. "Cryptocurrency losses totaling $200,000, plus additional gambling debts to some very unsavory characters. The kind of people who collect with baseball bats, not lawyers." But the real bombshell came when he showed me Adrian's banking records. Here's a $30,000 cash withdrawal from his account 3 months ago, followed by a $30,000 deposit into Ember Lawson's account the same day. The timing coincides perfectly with when this whole scheme would have been planned. Even more devastating were the text message records Webb had obtained through his law enforcement contacts. Page after page of communications between Adrian and Ember detailing every aspect of their conspiracy. "Remember to cry when you tell him about the pregnancy," read one message from Adrian. "Dad's a sucker for tears." Another, "If he doesn't pay the second demand, we move to legal threats. I've researched sexual harassment law. The mere accusation will destroy him." The most chilling message came from just days earlier. "Phase 3 is working perfectly. His reputation is finished. Now we just wait for him to cave and pay whatever we ask." Armed with this evidence, I made one final preparation, scheduling an emergency all-hands meeting for the following Friday. Every employee, every department head, and yes, both Ember and Adrian would be required to attend. Wednesday brought Dr. Harrison's call with the lab results I'd been expecting. 0 sperm count gram, complete azoospermia. The vasectomy was 100% effective. There is absolutely no possibility you could father a child. That evening, I sat in my home office organizing the evidence that would vindicate me. Medical records proving biological impossibility, financial documents showing the conspiracy's funding, text messages revealing the detailed planning, and fresh lab results confirming my sterility. For the first time in weeks, I felt something I'd almost forgotten hope. The moment of truth had arrived. Friday morning arrived with the weight of inevitability. I stood before the packed conference room at Whitaker Enterprises looking out at 50 employees who'd watched my reputation crumble over the past month. Ember sat in the back row, her face pale and tense. Adrian occupied his usual spot near the front, playing the role of supportive son one final time. "Thank you all for coming." I began, my voice steady, despite the gravity of what I was about to reveal. "I've called this meeting to address the allegations that have been made against me and to present evidence that will clarify the truth once and for all." I held up a manila folder, thick with documentation. 4 weeks ago, Ember Lawson claimed that I had gotten her pregnant and was refusing to take responsibility. Today I'm going to show you why that claim is not just false, but medically impossible. The room fell silent. I could see confusion on some faces, skepticism on others, but everyone was listening. 18 months ago, when my beloved wife Rosalind was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer, I made a deeply personal decision. My voice caught slightly as I continued. Out of absolute loyalty to the woman I'd loved for 30 years, I underwent a vasectomy. If I couldn't have children with Rosalind, then I would never have children with anyone. I placed the first set of documents on the projector. These are my medical records from Dr. Michael Harrison's office showing the procedure performed in March of last year. The post-operative analysis confirmed complete success. Gasps rippled through the room. Ember's face had gone white as paper. But I didn't want to rely solely on old records. I continued placing fresh lab results on the projector. This week I underwent new testing. The results show 0 sperm count, complete azoospermia. There is absolutely no biological possibility that I could father a child with anyone. The silence was deafening. I could see the pieces clicking into place in people's minds, the realization that they'd been manipulated into believing a lie. "Ember," I said, turning to face her directly, "would you like to explain to everyone how you came to believe you were pregnant with my child?" She was trembling now, tears streaming down her face. I can't. Then perhaps you'd like to explain this. I placed the bank records on the projector, showing the $30,000 transfer from Adrian's account to hers. Or these text messages between you and my son detailing every aspect of your conspiracy. The messages appeared on the screen and I read them aloud. Remember to cry when you tell him about the pregnancy. Dad's a sucker for tears. Ember broke completely. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I never wanted to hurt anyone. Adrian said it would be harmless, that you'd just pay some money and everyone would move on. All eyes turned to Adrian, who sat frozen in his chair like a deer caught in headlights. My son paid Ember $30,000 to drug me at his birthday party and create a compromising situation, I announced to the room. He then coached her through multiple extortion attempts, and when those failed, he launched a systematic campaign to destroy my reputation. I displayed more evidence: the cryptocurrency losses, the gambling debts, the threatening messages from loan sharks. Adrian lost his mother's entire life insurance payout, $200,000, in fraudulent cryptocurrency investments. He borrowed an additional $150,000 from dangerous people. When they began threatening violence, he decided to solve his problems by framing his own father for sexual misconduct. Adrian's composure finally shattered. He fell to his knees in front of the entire room, tears streaming down his face. I'm sorry, Dad, he wailed. I was desperate. They were going to hurt me. I thought if I could just get enough money to pay them off. I never meant for it to go this far. The room watched in stunned silence as my 28-year-old son, the boy I'd raised, loved, and trusted with my business legacy, begged for forgiveness for the most calculated betrayal imaginable. You destroyed my reputation, I said quietly. You turned my employees against me. You made me question my own sanity and morality, all to cover up your gambling addiction and poor choices. I know, please forgive me. But forgiveness, I realized, was a luxury I couldn't afford just yet. The damage was too extensive, the betrayal too complete. The hardest decision still lay ahead. The conference room had emptied except for the three of us, father, son, and the woman who'd helped orchestrate my destruction. Adrian remained on his knees, his expensive suit wrinkled and tear-stained, while Ember sat hunched in her chair, mascara streaking down her cheeks. For 30 years I'd built my reputation on fairness and integrity. Now I faced the most agonizing choice of my life: pursue criminal charges against my own flesh and blood, or find another path that might salvage something from this wreckage. Stand up, Adrian, I said quietly. We need to discuss your future. He rose unsteadily, unable to meet my eyes. Dad, please. I'll do anything to make this right. Anything. I studied the young man I'd raised, seeing a stranger in his place. Then you'll accept my conditions without negotiation. All of them. Over the next hour, I laid out 5 non-negotiable terms that would govern the rest of our relationship. First, Adrian would be permanently removed from my will and stripped of any claim to Whitaker Enterprises. The business I'd spent 3 decades building would never be his inheritance. Second, he was terminated immediately from the company with no severance, no references, and a permanent ban from returning in any capacity. Third, he would issue a full public apology through the Arizona Republic, Phoenix Business Journal, and social media platforms, accepting complete responsibility for the false allegations and clearing my name. Fourth, every penny of his gambling debts would be repaid through his own labor, with no financial assistance from me whatsoever. Fifth, he would enter mandatory counseling for gambling addiction and remain in treatment for a minimum of 2 years. Accept these conditions, I told him, or I file criminal charges for conspiracy, extortion, and defamation. The choice is yours. Adrian's voice was barely a whisper. I accept. Ember's fate was simpler, but equally final. She was terminated immediately and given 72 hours to repay the $30,000 or face prosecution. She managed to scrape together the money by selling her car and borrowing from relatives, then disappeared from Phoenix entirely. The aftermath unfolded exactly as I'd hoped. Adrian's public confession, published prominently in both newspapers, sent shockwaves through the business community. The detailed admission of his cryptocurrency losses, gambling addiction, and elaborate conspiracy to frame his father generated a mixture of outrage and sympathy. Outrage at his actions, sympathy for my situation. Within weeks, clients began returning. The Henderson Mall project was quietly offered back to us. City council members called to apologize for their hasty judgment. The Phoenix Business Association invited me to speak at their annual dinner about maintaining integrity, under pressure. My employees, initially shocked by the revelation, gradually returned to treating me with the respect I'd earned over decades. Some admitted they'd harbored doubts about the allegations from the beginning, but felt pressured to remain silent. But the real test of my decision came in the months and years that followed. 2 years later, I received occasional updates about Adrian through mutual acquaintances. He was working construction jobs, ironically for one of my competitors, living in a modest apartment and slowly paying down his debts. The counseling had helped him understand the psychological roots of his gambling addiction, but the damage to our relationship seemed irreparable. We exchanged birthday cards and brief holiday messages, nothing more. The easy intimacy we'd once shared, the shared jokes, the business discussions, the father-son bond that had sustained me through Rosalind's death. All of it had been sacrificed on the altar of his desperation and my necessary justice. Sometimes late at night in my study, I questioned whether I'd been too harsh. Could I have found a path that preserved both justice and family unity? But then I'd remember the calculated cruelty of his campaign, the way he'd weaponized my love for him. And I knew I'd made the only choice possible. The hardest lesson I learned was that love without boundaries isn't love at all. It's enabling. For years I'd protected Adrian from the consequences of his poor choices, always ready with money or connections to solve his problems. My misguided compassion had created the conditions for his ultimate betrayal. True love, I realize, sometimes means allowing those we care about to face the full weight of their actions. It means setting boundaries that protect both parties from destructive patterns. It means choosing difficult truths over comfortable lies. Today, Whitaker Enterprises is stronger than ever, built on a foundation of renewed trust and hard-won wisdom. My reputation, tested by fire, emerged more solid than before. The Phoenix business community knows I'm a man who stands by his principles even when it costs him everything. Do I hope for reconciliation with Adrian someday? Absolutely. But it will happen on new terms with clear boundaries and genuine accountability. The relationship we had before, built on my unconditional support and his unquestioned privilege, died in that conference room. What might emerge in its place, if we're both willing to do the work, could be something healthier and more honest than what we'd lost. The truth had set me free, but freedom, I learned, sometimes comes at the highest possible price. Looking back on this painful journey, I've learned that betrayal stories like mine teach us the hardest truths about family and forgiveness. When my own son orchestrated this elaborate deception, I discovered that love without boundaries isn't really love at all. It's enabling destructive behavior. God gave us the wisdom to discern right from wrong, and sometimes that means making difficult choices, even with those we love most. The Lord teaches us that accountability and consequences are part of genuine love, not punishment. Through prayer and reflection, I found the strength to choose justice over easy forgiveness, knowing that God honors truth above all else. These betrayal stories aren't just about the pain we endure. They're about the strength we discover within ourselves. Like many grandpa stories passed down through generations, this experience taught me that protecting our values sometimes requires us to stand alone. The grandpa stories my own father shared always emphasized that character is tested not in good times, but when everything falls apart. To anyone facing similar betrayal stories in their own families, remember, setting boundaries doesn't mean you love someone less. It means you love them enough to hold them accountable for their actions. The grandpa stories that matter most are the ones where we choose principle over convenience, truth over comfort. If this story touched your heart or reminded you of your own family challenges, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to hear more real-life stories about family forgiveness and finding strength in our darkest moments. Your support means everything to me.